So, do you know what happened in Diablo Immortal? Have you heard the story? Well, today you are in luck because in this video, I'm going to be telling you everything that you need to know about Diablo Immortal. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Captain Nemo. Welcome to another Diablo Immortal video. Today is a very special one. Today, we're talking about the story of Diablo Immortal. I'm getting together with my friend Nineball, who is a lore expert. He knows everything about Diablo. And we're going to talk about the story of Immortal. What happened? We're going to prepare you so when the game comes out, you know everything that you need to know. On top of that, I actually gathered all of the hottest questions that the community posted about Diablo Immortal, and Nineball and myself, we're going to answer them for you. Remember, this video is going to be chaptered, so you can skip around anytime you like via those chapters. While you're down there, make sure to smash the like button, hit the subscribe. You know what to do. Let's get started. And who do we have here with us today? That's right, we have a Mr. Nineball, who I consider basically the oracle of Diablo lore. And what's an oracle? A database of knowledge. This man knows everything about the lore, and I figured that today would be a fantastic day to bring him along and have him answer all of these questions that we need to know. We need to get prepared for Diablo Immortal. It's very important. And he's here. He's going to be our slave answering these questions. I'm very excited about it. Nineball, how's it going, my friend? What's going on?
Oh, I'm doing good, doing good. You know, I'm happy to be here. I guess I got some big shoes to fill with an intro like that one. Jeez.
I have, I went around the community and I got some of the hottest questions about Diablo Immortal lore. We need to get prepared. The game is coming out in 2021, and I mean, who better than you? By the way, where can people find you? Because some people might not know who you are. So can you tell us the best place that we can find you, and what are you all about, Nineball?
So yeah, I've been a long time Diablo content creator. I'm the host of the West March Workshop. That's getting ready to actually celebrate, 7 years of content creation over there on the podcast coming up in just a few months here. As well as I've been a writer for BlizzPro. I write for Diablo fans from time to time. Just you can find me, a little bit. I'm spattered around everywhere. But primarily, you can find me over on Twitter at NineballGamer, or if you want to look up my show, The West March Workshop, it's on iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, all the good places.
The man is everywhere, and I'll link him. I'll link all of that information down below, so you can go check it out. Make sure to do so in the description. He really knows a lot of his stuff. You want to make sure that you follow him. I do, and I get all of my lore stuff from him. And now that we have him here, we have him available, so let's get started. So I got a bunch of questions for you. And basically the way we're kind of going to go through this, we want to talk about the lore of Diablo Immortal, right? We want to know what happens. A lot of people in the mobile community have never played Diablo and might not know actually what's going on at all. So they see the commercials, they see the trailers, they might even see some of the streams that's been happening, and they're like, oh, what's going on here? It's a cool game. I want to know. Well, I put some questions together from the community, some from my friends. I actually have one question, I swear to you, from my grandmother. So, yeah. We'll leave that one for last. Grandma Nemo's gonna have to wait till the end for she watches every show. All right. So, first question, and this is an important one. People want to know. The question was, who is Diablo and why is he immortal?
All right. It is kind of, it's the name of the franchise, right? So that'd be a great place to go through and start. Well, to go beyond just a little bit within the Diablo world itself, it's kind of like this massive climactic battle between good and evil, the forces of hell, and the angelic hosts that reside over in heaven. Diablo is one of the leaders of hell. He's referred to as one of the three prime evils, and he is the Lord of Terror. He is, one of the most insidious of all of the leaders of hell, and many consider him the most dangerous. And so he was the one that took place in the very first game, where you have to go through these giant catacombs, descending almost all the way down into hell itself in order to defeat him. And so that's kind of like is that iconic image of the devil and such that he goes through and brings forth to the table, that the whole franchise itself is named after.
That's cool. So let me ask you, since you played Immortal, we think we're gonna actually see Diablo in Immortal? I mean, he's in the he's in the name. So are we gonna see Diablo himself in the actual game?
It's one of those ones. Can you have a Diablo game without having Diablo in it? With the timeline of the story, is just a couple of years after Diablo was defeated in the events of Diablo 2. But we know that the demons in the Diablo universe are effectively immortal. It takes some time, but they'll eventually be resurrected in hell in order to go through and unleash their reign of terror all over again. We just don't know how long that process takes. One of the big bad guys that we're introduced to early on in the story that we got to see in the technical alpha is this demon named Skarn, who is one of Diablo's chief lieutenants, and he's hunting down these artifacts of power, these world stone shards, in order to try and resurrect Diablo faster. So there is a possibility, especially when you go and you look at some of the concept art that we've seen from Diablo Immortal, where it's a half resurrected Diablo, where it's just you kind of some bones with a little bit of flesh, kind of just scraped over it. So it kind of gives some imagery that maybe we might be fighting a partially resurrected Diablo in order to try and keep him dead for just a little bit longer.
Oh, this is interesting. He's getting a little kind of sneaky over here. So we took him down. He supposedly died, but now he's trying to manipulate his minions around, trying to get these shards. And actually, it's one of the questions, so we'll go right into that question. Somebody asked, "What is the shard?" Right? Because they saw that in the commercial, and somebody said, "Well, I saw this broken piece of glass," and someone said something about a world stone. So how about we say, what is the world stone? What is the shard? What's going on with that?
So that kind of ties back into what I was saying earlier about how the kind of the whole history and story of the Diablo universe itself is this giant, battle between good and evil. In the beginning, there was one kind of overall creator deity, Anu. And without getting too far into it, he eventually kind of split himself into good and evil that caused this conflict from the beginning. And he battled his evil side, which took on the form of Tathamet, a gigantic seven-headed dragon, and they killed one another. But some parts of Anu survived, basically being slain. And in that, one of those pieces was literally his eye, which is later called the World Stone. And within that World Stone is the power of creation. That's where it's got its name from. And so that is kind of the key element that the demons and angels constantly fight for. Because whoever controls the World Stone has untold powers. They can even develop entire worlds. Sanctuary, the place where all of our Diablo stories take place, is created, by that World Stone. Because there's such tremendous power there, a group of rebels of both angels and demons that got tired of the war decided that they were going to work together to steal the World Stone. They created Sanctuary, hence its name, and hid it. But eventually it got found, by the forces of hell and heaven. And in order to try and keep the world secure, they had kind of an armistice. They had a non-aggression pact. And this a giant eternal conflict between these two forces for the very first time, in all of creation, came to a halt. But the forces of hell, being ever insidious, worked out a way that they could try and corrupt the World Stone, and so that way it would be permanently under their control. The demons have held the World Stone for countless eons in the back and forth that have gone on in the eternal conflict, but they finally came up with this idea where they could corrupt it using the essence of one of their leaders, Diablo's brother Baal, could basically infuse his soul into it and corrupt it permanently. And then that way the World Stone could never be retaken by the angels, and the demons would eventually win the eternal conflict, turning all of creation over to chaos. During the events of Diablo 2, you're actually fighting against Diablo, their older brother Mephisto, and Baal, and you're just a little bit too late. Baal puts his soul into the World Stone, he corrupts it, and then Tyrael, who's one of the angels, in order to stop the demons from having control of this powerful artifact, destroys it. It changes the face of Sanctuary. It creates a crater out of a mountain and all that. But these shards of the World Stone are flung to the far corners of the earth, but they still bear a little bit of echoes of Baal's corruption. And so wherever it is that they've fallen, they begin to corrupt everything around them. But this is still one of the most powerful things in the entire universe. And even these little residual shards are just pieces of immense power. And the Diablo's minion Skarn is going and hunting them down. And it's because of these, kind of like these corrupting shards that the whole conflict for Diablo Immortal takes place.
Wow, that's pretty crazy. So is it right in between Diablo 2 and 3? And it actually, if anybody who visits the Diablo Immortal websites, who hasn't seen the story, you can see that there's a little timeline there, and I'll link that and show that. In fact, I will switch over to the other screen and we can take a look at that. Now, this is very interesting. I really like this. Before we go further, one thing I want to say, and this is very, very important. I forgot to say it earlier. You did a really good deep dive 7-part episode on Echo's channel with Echo himself, right? Where we talked about all of this stuff, where you really talked about and broke down all of this. It was really, really cool. I really liked it. So it was important. It's important that you go check that out. I will link that down below. So anybody who wants to check that out, it's a playlist on Echo's channel where Nineball goes like ham into like all of the details.
Those are definitely the long form answers over there. So expect to sit back, stay a while and listen for just a tad bit longer on those ones.
So here we are. We're in the middle of all of this, right? D2, D3. We're slammed down, and I kind of love this. I love this whole. Let's step back and get a deeper dive into the story. So this is great, and this is the kind of shards that everybody's talking about. The questions were, what is these glass shards? Well, it's not glass. It's corrupted shards, part of the world stone, and it's pretty crazy. We dive back into the story over here, where this world stone, right? It's the Eye of Anu. You said it's it's responsible for creation. It has all of this crazy power, and if you hold it, you basically, you become kind of God, right? It kind of seems like it because you can create stuff.
When the world stone was whole, during a conflict that was called the Sin War, that kind of was that head where heaven and hell found out about Sanctuary and began to fight over it before they came to kind of a standstill. There was the lone renegade that still held out and survived, from the original theft of the World Stone, an angel known as Anarius. He was the sole holder of the World Stone, and he could confidently hold back the forces, the combined forces of heaven and hell, all by himself. Because whereas the World Stone itself would trade hands constantly between the angels and the demons, and when the demons held it, they would always fight amongst one another about who actually got to control the World Stone, and the angels were just there to try and preserve its power. But no one had held on to it for the length of time that Anarius had, and he had gotten to a level of mastery and depth with it that probably no other entity in existence besides Lilith could ever come close to. And he was able to just basically say no to both heaven and hell. And they were fearful of the power that he wielded by controlling the World Stone. So you have these two kind of eternal forces that have been battling since the beginning of time. And one guy was able to stand there and say no because he had the World Stone. Having even a shard of that power and what that could do.
I mean, it's crazy just to kind of jump into this. Well, the World Stone, I mean, it's destroyed. I mean, yeah, there are shards and there's power, and we jump in here. So now we're coming in here as this mobile community. Hello, we're jumping in right into the middle of all of this, and we say, okay, so what's happening now? The Sanctuary, which is a place that's supposed to be, well, right? You talked about this, how there's an eternal battle between heaven and hell, and how there, you can't really have a perfect place, right? It kind of has to be a middle ground, and right, that's where Sanctuary is. It's middle ground where both angels and demons can be, and all that good stuff. And you talk a lot about that in the episodes where you went into it with Echo, which were great. Now we jump into this, and Sanctuary it's bad, right? Things are really bad. The World Stone is destroyed. I mean, what's happening right now? Like, what are we doing? And I mean, where are we? Where's Sanctuary? Everything is burning. What's the deal? Could you just kind of like give us a little bit of a feel? Like if you were living in Sanctuary and all of a sudden this happened, like what's happening right now?
So, I mean, there's a lot that has been going on in Sanctuary, after the events of Diablo 2. Like, just imagine if, Mount Everest all of a sudden just exploded.
Wow.
That kind of like world, shattering event going through and happening. And then all of these shards going through and raining across the land, meteors and stuff, falling to the far corners of the earth. But then, the Baal was the Lord of Destruction, and those shards kind of have part of his essence in it. They're corrupting the land all across Sanctuary. The effects that might have on just the regular person. You might give in to some of your baser instincts in order to go, attack and be just more like aggressive and feral while in the presence of one of these shards. But it's going to corrupt and twist everything around it. The wildlife and such. In the way that demons work within the realm of Diablo, is that demons kind of like have a hard time staying in Sanctuary, but they have an easier time kind of like following bigger demons around. And the larger demons like Baal, Diablo, Mephisto, any of the primevals and such, that the minor demons just kind of are almost willed into existence around them. I think in Deckard Cain, who's kind of like the main oracle in the Diablo franchise, had written in his journal that the lesser demons are the footprints of the primevals. They're just kind of willed into existence. So you imagine that the entire world is covered in this like corruption of one of the most powerful demons in existence. There's going to be a lot more, demonic sightings and just like evil afoot, all over it. And some of the things that we just saw in the technical alpha is you've got all of these other factions that maybe not themselves were corrupted by the world stone, but they're going and seeking it out for their own nefarious plans, whether it is to resurrect other ancient evils that might have died, or just using its powers to control or attack towns and things of that nature. So there's a lot of bad that's going on around there. And in addition to that, one of the other big things is that one of the primary religions in Sanctuary, the Church of the Zakarum, was just found to be corrupted to its core. Mephisto, the Lord of Hatred, had actually corrupted the Church of the Zakarum for centuries while they had held his shard, what they thought, in prison. But he managed to exude his influence outside of his prison and control the entire religion, from kind of like from the top down. And while they still exist, their capital, their leadership, and all of that was completely gutted and destroyed, during the events of Diablo 2 through the adventurers, one killing Mephisto, killing all of the main council of the Zakarum and such. But they've got they're reeling. They're going to be on the ropes, just trying to figure out what is the next step. How do they salvage this? How do we maintain our values when for so long we were under the guidance of evil.
Man, this is, we coming in at the right time, if you ask me. I mean, this is just the time to come in for all the action, right? Wow. Talk about, okay, so that's insane. That's what's kind of what's happening in Sanctuary, and here we are. And this is the next question I wanted to, this is what people are asking, and who are we, right? Someone asked, so they did a little bit of research, and they said, we heard of this word called the Nephilim, and we don't know what that is. They haven't played D3, they haven't played D2, they don't really understand that. So I kind of wanted to go into it. Could you, let's talk about that. Who is, if you were a barbarian, who are you? What is the Nephilim? Can we chat about that a little bit and kind of explain to the viewers, who are we?
Sure. So the player character is essentially a Nephilim. This is something that's kind of like a concept that has been developing throughout the course of the Diablo franchise itself. Like, what separates your average adventurer, or not your average adventurer, but your kind of like your powerful adventurer from like the average person that exists in the world. And they came up with this concept of the Nephilim that goes back into that whole that ancient war of good and evil and such. Where in the beginning, when it was just Anu that went kind of like created the universe, he was the embodiment of both good and evil, and none of this conflict, none of this chaos started until he separated all of the evil from himself. And the eternal conflict had raged since the beginning of time, And some of the angels and demons just got tired with it. They formed this little renegade bunch. They plotted. They stole the World Stone, and something that you had mentioned before, where even though the angels and the demons had controlled the World Stone before, anything that they created, it didn't last very long. The worlds that the angels created were too orderly, and life never could come from such stingent kind of like order. And the same time, anything that the demons created just consumed itself, and just pure like chaos and fury. But when you had that kind of subdued touch of both forces working together, kind of like the good and evil, the order and the chaos, they created perfection. They created sanctuary, a world that could exist, that could actually have life and maintain itself. And within this kind of like perfect sanctuary, this Garden of Eden that they created, they began to know one another and put aside their differences and such. That led to some of the angels and the demons kind of getting to know each other a little bit more personally. And from that, their offspring were known as the Nephilim. And because they had that combined angelic and demonic heritage, they were far greater than the sum of their parts. That these Nephilim were basically gods, that each and every one of them had power that far surpassed anything that any of the angels and the demons had seen before. And it caused some of that conflict to go through and come back. Some of the renegades saw the Nephilim as abominations, as the purest form of heresy, and others saw that as this is kind of like divine providence, and that this is what should be, kind of like this return to balance. And it kind of came to blows. And it eventually ended up with the two main renegades, Anarius and Lilith, coming to battle for one another. Anarius, kind of seeing that all of the Nephilim should be purged, but deciding to give in to his angelic thoughts that he should give them mercy. Whereas Lilith saw the Nephilim as an army that she could use to win the eternal conflict, leave Sanctuary, defeat Hell, defeat Heaven, and then Lilith and Anarius could rule over everything. That was in her mind. Eventually, Anarius won their conflict, banished Lilith, and then he said that the Nephilim, you all can exist, but I'm going to use the World Stone and subdue all of your power. I'm going to take your power from you. And the Nephilim were like, no, you can't do that. And so they went to go through and fight back against Anarius. And then came the Scourging, where Anarius, backed up with the power of the World Stone, was able to slaughter the majority of the Nephilim. And the few that survived, or the ones that ran away, found that over time their powers began to diminish, as Anarius manipulated into the World Stone as a giant like dampening field that took their powers. And then also with every subsequent generation of Nephilim, as their children were weaker and their children's children were even weaker, and so on and so forth, until eventually these near omnipotent beings that were the original Nephilim were just humans. They were just regular old people that had no idea of their past, so no idea of what the events that went through that created their world or even their own bloodlines. But every once in a while, there's a couple of individuals that can come along and can tap into their heritage. Any spellcaster that's ever existed in like the universe of Diablo basically is kind of like awakening that Nephilim heritage. They're awakening that power that exists in their blood in order to go through and wield magic. But over time, like eventually you had the Sin War, where there's another climactic battle between heaven and hell on Sanctuary, alongside some Nephilim that had fully reawakened, and the Nephilim were actually able to wrest the control of the World Stone away from Anarius. But seeing the chaos that could happen when their powers were fully reawakened on a mass scale, the kind of like the leader of this Nephilim group, known as Odyssean, kind of subtly altered the World Stone, that it wouldn't free everybody initially, but would begin to allow those Nephilim powers, those Nephilim heritages, to awaken over time. And then, as we mentioned, eventually when we get to Diablo 2, the World Stone itself has been destroyed. And so kind of like that, what does that mean about that inhibiting field that was stopping the Nephilim powers from going through and being created? And that's why after Diablo 2 and eventually into the Diablo 3, you've got these massive superpowered beings that are just kind of like popping up at random all over the place as they're going and tapping into that Nephilim power, and that Nephilim heritage. And that's kind of, where our characters in Immortal are coming from, is that, some of them are just going to start off as your regular barbarian or your regular demon hunter, but over time they're going to grow and become something, that's far more powerful than any of their peers as they awaken that Nephilim power inside of them.
First of all, amazing, right? First of all, my first question to you is, does this mean that I could actually be a wizard then? Because we are human, right? And if that was the case, then I could tap into my Nephilim power and one time, maybe, possibly, become a wizard.
Maybe. Dude, you just gotta you have to sit there and you gotta think really hard. And if that fails, just remember there is no spoon.
You know what? Okay, I'm gonna practice. Spoons, wizards, bunny. Okay, got it. All right.
I'll be interested in following up on your progress. Let me know how it goes.
I will keep you up to date, you and everybody else. But you make a few very good points here. You make a lot of good points, and I love the whole idea of how you can actually take this story and really really kind of tied into a bunch of other stuff. One being the Matrix, two being X-Men. Not for nothing, but if I was the Nephilim, and I know we talked about this before, I would be pissed, man. I would be real pissed. So, the angels and the demons, got it together, which wasn't the Nephilim's fault. We're just the babies, right? So here we are. They got it together, which was, that was their problem. And then all of a sudden, the Nephilim got created. We became better versions of them, which, of course, evolution, I guess, makes sense, right? Then they got scared of us. I say us like I'm a wizard, but they got scared of us. All right, and then because of that, manipulated things, slaughtered us, destroyed us, because we were literally the evolution, the next phase of what's happening. And then we got killed. We got our powers taken away, and which is great. Now slowly things are coming back, which is nice. But if I was the Nephilim, I would be pretty pissed. This is not a very nice situation for the Nephilim, if you ask me. What do you think about that, man?
It definitely sucks. And that's one of the ones where it's like there's not really many of the firstborn, like the original Nephilim, that are still around. The last sightings that we had of any of them were even just like a couple thousand years before any of the events of the Diablo games took place during the Sin War, and then they all just kind of vanished. Wow. And it was their time to recede into the background, as it were. But who knows? Characters like Bulkathos or Rathma might still be going through and floating around behind the scenes. We're not sure. But that kind of like is like the crux of it when you come into like the current day, is that they're the flame that burns brighter burns shorter. And so whereas any individual Nephilim, especially like comparing it to like the heroes of Diablo 3, where even the most powerful they were able to defeat the amalgamated power of all of the primeval, combine their forces together in the Black Soulstone to try and recreate kind of like almost an amalgamation of that original Tathamet, the primeval. The Nephilim was able to defeat. And then you had one of the most powerful angels, Malthael, who then gorged himself on the power of thousands, if not millions, of human souls to try and take some of that Nephilim power into himself. Was able to, go and cast him down. But at the end of the day, there's still just a mortal man or woman. They're going to grow old and die, while Diablo or Imperius or anybody else, in heaven or hell that might look on, at humanity with trepidation, can just wait. They can just wait it out.
That's a good point. And the people that are just kind of tuning into this whole Diablo story, look how much stuff, right, we're talking about here. This is like nothing. This is just a speck in the sand.
This is the truncated version. Trust me, I could talk a lot longer about this stuff.
This is what's great about Diablo, and I kind of just wanted to, that's kind of what we were talking about this a little bit, to give you a little taste into stuff, like when he was talking about Bulkathos, right? Did you notice that if you were watching or playing with the Barbarian, whenever you throw a special, he says that by the power of the book. So he mentions that right here. He would go into that.
There's tie-ins to all of it. There's a lot of that, the ones where a lot of the kind of like the cultures. There's a lot of like culture identity when it comes to the classes, that like the different classes will be tied to like a culture within the world of Sanctuary, and a lot of those cultures go back and are kind of founded around certain like archetypes of the ancient Nephilim that came before. Bulkathos was the sire of the barbarians. Rathma was the sire of the necromancers, so on and so forth. There's a lot there. That once you go through and you start learning those things, you pick up on those little mentions, like you said, when he says like Bulkathos or something along those lines.
Yeah, that was really cool. I love that. I love the fact that the Immortal is stuck in between D2 and D3. I always love that, like going back into time. Wait, before we go crazy, my next question, because I have a bunch of questions here. All right, my next question actually comes from my grandmother. Here we go. All right, I hope you're ready. She was watching my stream. And she doesn't know about Diablo. She was watching my stream, and she was wondering, who is Zoltan Kuhl, and how come he's got a library? That's what she asked.
All right. So one of the lead ups to the story of Diablo, kind of like its preface, its pre-story. It was the tale of the three brothers, Diablo, Baal, and Mephisto, getting banished to Sanctuary. So that way, there was part of their grand plan to try and corrupt the World Stone. Tyrael, the Archangel of Justice, saw this and knew that he had to do something. But if he were to tell the rest of heaven that the three primevals were walking around Sanctuary, that would nullify the treaty, and heaven and hell would just have an all-out battle, and it would destroy Sanctuary and all of humanity. So he decided to secretly go to Sanctuary and created a force of the most powerful mages from across the world to try and fight back against Baal, Diablo, and Mephisto. And this ragtag group of these different clans, he ended up calling the Horadrim. Then the Horadrim's goal and task was to protect Sanctuary from the powers of hell. Zoltan Kuhl was one of the founding members of the Horadrim, and his mage clan, which I believe is the Tan or the Tan. I hope I'm pronouncing that one right. And they were masters of transmutation. Going through and mastering matter, converting it. Kind of like the alchemist stone, converting lead into gold, stuff like that, or even just creating golems and elemental spirits. That was his specialty, and so he was given these artifacts known as soul stones, which are kind of like shards of the world stone, to keep the essences of Baal, Mephisto, and Diablo imprisoned. These are the prisons that they were kind of put into to maybe try and enact a permanent solution to keep them from resurrecting. And through Zoltan Kuhl's study of the Soul Stone and just materials that he might have gotten from Tyrael and such, as well as tracking the three brothers all across Sanctuary, in his studies, he stumbled upon the actual history of humanity. He found out the history of Sanctuary between the angels and the demons, the Nephilim, and the creation of humanity. And these are things that he saw as, why are we doing the angels' bidding? Why are we playing, lip service to heaven? Why are we even bothering going through and messing with hell when we could be gods? And so after their trials were done, and they went through and they sealed away the three souls of Diablo, Mephisto, and Baal, he left. He left the Horadrim, and he went in search of more information on the Nephilim, more information on soul stones and all those other types of things, because he wanted to unlock that Nephilim spark inside of himself. He already was a powerful wizard, but he knew he could be more. There was far more potential inside of him, and he was looking for a way to unlock that. And eventually, he would share it with other people, but Zoltan Kuhl, being the evil, maniacal wizard, of course, would rule above all. He would be the first among equals, of course. But he created these massive libraries and these, kind of like repositories of knowledge, so that way, he could learn everything he could about the history of not just Sanctuary, but of heaven and hell, and all of these things that he studied and accumulated in order to try and awaken that Nephilim spark inside of himself. He also, was the one that created the Black Soul Stone, which is kind of like one of the central focuses of the story of Diablo 3, because he was trying to create a better soul stone. He was trying to, in essence, create a better, piece of the world stone, through his own manipulations and power. And yeah, so he was a very avid reader, and he experimented with all sorts of magic outside of his speciality and such in order to try and accomplish these goals of becoming a god. That's what Zoltan Kulle wanted. He wanted to become a god, and he was very close. He got very close. But he did a lot of bad things, blood sacrifices and all other types of stuff, and so his Haradrim brothers eventually had to hunt him down and put an end to him. But by then Zoltan Kulle had already planned for that eventuality and had made himself effectively immortal. He kind of like tied his blood into like magical sand and such, so that way his soul could preserve on even after he died. And even though the hunters, of the Haradrim were able to kind of kill him, they had to they had to sever his head, drain all the blood from his body, and then like bury the head in one location, his body in the other, and then hide the blood over in these like ancient trapped dungeons and such to try and keep him from ever being able to resurrect. And well, by the time that you get to immortal, his body is still well hidden and such, but we get to get one of his simulacrums, one of his kind of like constructs that he created of himself, in order that was there, and the main mission was to kind of oversee the library. And that's who we don't actually interact with the real Zoltan Kulle. We just interact with kind of like a facsimile of him in the one of the libraries of Zoltan Kulle, but there are many others across the globe, and so we might visit other places that we might come across different personalities of Zoltan Kulle in future updates in Immortal.
That's really, really cool. First of all, Grandma Nemo she's going to be very, very happy. Thank you so much for that.
I hope that she is. I hope that I answered that question sufficiently for her.
I'll get you an update tomorrow.
Here, I'll be looking forward to it.
You got it. And this, really cool, right? Look how much depth there is and how much story. I didn't know Zoltan Kulle. I didn't know actually that the Haradrim killed him. That's crazy.
Yeah, wow. I mean, you probably won't really see too much of that in Immortal itself, because we learned that story, around 15 years after the events of Immortal over in Diablo 3. But yeah, he eventually had to be killed by his own brothers in the Haradrim because he had become that much of a threat. Like I said, he was very close. He literally was in the process of finalizing the Black Soul Stone and giving himself the vessel that he could unlock his own, Nephilim capabilities when they killed him. Because when you resurrect him in Diablo 3, it literally takes just a couple more seconds and boom, the Soul Stone's finished. He was mid cast when he got interrupted.
Man, that's gotta suck for Zoltan, huh?
But that, to me, that just makes for will we be able to go back and play that? Because we got to see in Immortal, we see one of Zoltan Kulle's memories. The defeat of Baal when he was fighting alongside the other Haradrim. Could that dungeon be used where we go through and see Zoltan Kulle's final moments? Imagine that kind of like that climactic battle where you're having to put him down before he finishes casting his spell to create the Black Soul Stone.
That would be really cool.
Really cool dungeon and concept, coming from the lore made manifest.
That was actually, they did speak a little bit about the Haradrim. So somebody asked that. One of my friends asked that. I said, "Oh, who's the Haradrim?" And I'm like, "How'd you hear about that?" I said there was one of the dungeons that actually did instructions end right when we were playing. In the beginning cinematic, they talked about it before the Runes of Sescheron, before in the times of the Haradrim. They said. And I think that's when somebody who didn't know picked it up and they said, "Oh, I'm like, who's the Haradrim?" It's like the baddest, well.
Oh yeah, you're going through and talking about like the X-Men and such. The Haradrim were like the Avengers of their time.
Man, that's so cool. Yeah. All right. So that was a very good question. Now, okay. So I could talk to you about lore for hours, and you know what? Maybe
I can
we.
answer you for hours.
I think we might need to. Maybe what we need to do is we need to make sure that whoever has any more questions about it can throw them down in the comments, and I'll take all those questions. And we're gonna have episode 2. We're gonna have Nightball back. And I mean, I have one. Before we go though, I have one question for you that I've been holding on to for I don't know, a couple of weeks now. Okay. It's very important, and I saved it till the end because this is going to be the closing question that we have. This is a very important one. I hope you're ready for this. I know I didn't tell you the questions before, so maybe you're not prepared. But my question to you is, why do you hate Kale so much?
This is coming from one of the Diablo podcasts where you and Echo were going through and talking about Kale, and I was in the chat, and so I answered. I heard the best way to cook Kale is make sure that you use extra oil, so that way you can easily slide it out of the pan into the trash. And so I see that this is going through and coming full circle. And you're putting me on the spot here.
I waited for a long time for this.
No, not a fan. Not a fan.
Man.
I'll take asparagus. I'll take Brussels sprouts. I'll take spinach. Just I don't know. Kale doesn't do it for me.
You like Brussels sprouts though?
Oh yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, you're not so bad then. All right. Although I'll be honest with you, I really don't like kale that much either. In fact, you know what I do? Like I'll mask it because it's good for you and blah blah blah. You could throw it in some shakes.
It's one of those ones where it's like, what's the point of eating food that you have to add additional flavors to in order to enjoy it?
I mean, I hear you, but if you,
it's kind of like the people that, oh yeah, I love celery, but they'll never have celery by itself. It's always like with like peanut butter or something like that, and it's like just eat the peanut butter or just eat the hummus. Why put in the celery if you don't like celery by itself?
You have a valid point. I'm not going to argue with that. You have your own choices, and kale is not one of them. It's cool. I mean, but just a pointer from Captain Nemo right here for everyone. If you ever do need to eat kale, if you throw it in with pineapple and apple, those two together, for some reason, you won't taste the kale at all.
Then, if I won't taste the kale at all, then why don't I just eat pineapple and apple, and I won't taste the kale there either?
Because you get all the benefits of the kale, all the good stuff that they tell you get in kale when you eat kale, like the vitamins and stuff. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I'll Google this. I'll get back to you on that one as well. I got a lot of homework from this. I don't understand this. I gotta update you on a whole bunch of stuff. I gotta talk to Grandma, find out if she liked this. Now we're gonna talk.
You thought that this was you were just gonna be asking me questions. No. This is back and forth on this one.
You're flipping this around. I'm gonna be already prepared for episode 2. It's fine. Yeah, I have a blast. Honestly,
you gotta be prepared for episode 2, like the show notes you said you were gonna get me, before this episode.
I'm coming strong with episode 2. I hope you're ready. All right, I'm gonna have questions. I'm gonna go back to Grandma. We're gonna sit down, talk a little more about Zoltan Kulle. I'm sure she's gonna have more questions for you for sure. But all joking aside, I could probably talk to you about lore for hours. I love lore, and I know you are like well, we all know now that you're the lore master. So
I love lore too.
We definitely have to get back and talk about this, of course, in episode 2. But thanks again for being here. Is there anything else that you want to tell us? Is there anything that we missed? Anything that you want to say to the Immortal community, the new folks coming into Diablo? Immortal just coming in, straight off the boat, so to speak.
I mean, I was a very big advocate for when Diablo 3 came out, that it introduced a lot of new players to the Diablo universe, whether it be their first time playing it on PC or bringing in, predominantly console players, whether it was on the PlayStation, the Xbox, or eventually the Switch, bringing people in and becoming Diablo fans. Immortal is that for mobile gaming. Going through and having a Diablo game out there on mobile is going to open up this immense world that's just full of all this potential of lore and storytelling and such, that I think it's just a great, wonderful thing. And I can't wait to welcome all these new faces, all these new people into the Diablo community, because I mean, Immortal is a Diablo game. Even if it's the only Diablo game that you play, you're never going to touch the PC or the console versions. Doesn't matter. That makes you a Diablo player, and I, for one, can't wait to have you in our community.
Well said, my friend. Remember, you can find Nineball in the links down below. Make sure to follow him on Twitter. Make sure to follow him on all the rest of the social medias. The man knows everything about lore. And if you have any questions for him, make sure to sound down below. Maybe you can even go stalk him on his Twitter. I mean, I'm sure he'll answer some of the questions there as well. The man loves talking about lore. Nineball, thanks so much for coming to the show. I can't wait to talk to you again in episode 2. And take care, and I'll talk to you all later.